My spouse had an affair with her ex-college student, so I contacted AP's wife, and we got revenge. There is nothing that love can't make you do. I'm a 37-year-old man married to Kate, 35, for 2 years. Kate is a professor at City College, and I'm in marketing. We met at a common friend's party and befriended each other. We connected on social media, but nothing happened between us for a long time. She was dating someone at that time, and even I was in an on and off relationship. About 4 years ago, on her birthday, I wished her on Facebook. It was well past midnight. That chat went on for the whole night, and we ended up meeting the next day for coffee. She had no plans for her birthday, so I took her out for dinner and a long drive. It started from there, and fast forward to 2 years ago, we got married. In fact, it was only last month that we celebrated our second anniversary. Our life was running smoothly until a few weeks ago when my friend told me he had seen Kate with a man who looked quite young, probably in his 20s. I asked him what the big deal was. He could be a friend. My friend hesitantly told me their body language didn't suggest he was a friend. They were sitting very close to each other, and the guy's hand was on Kate's waist, with his lips almost touching her cheek. My friend said he stood there for a while to see if it was just a misunderstanding, but he actually saw them cuddling. Asked him if he had taken any pictures of them. He said it happened so suddenly that it didn't occur to him to take pictures. Besides, it was a public place, and he was afraid people would frown upon him for clicking photos of a couple in a romantic moment. Although I believed my friend, it was too vague to confront Kate about this. I couldn't just label her a cheater based on what my friend had seen. When I returned home, I saw Kate busy reading a book. I wanted to ask her if she had met her friend that day, but I couldn't figure out the best way to ask without sounding suspicious. It would have been easier if we were a couple who shared every minute detail of our day with each other. It wasn't that we didn't share anything, but we didn't share everything, just the important stuff. To get into the zone, I started with small talk. I made up a story that I bumped into my school friend during a client meeting, and he was now our client. We ended up having lunch together. Her reaction was very generic. "Oh, that's nice. Must have been great catching up with your old friend." I was like, "Yeah." I then asked her about her day. She said it was just normal, nothing special had happened, and she got back to reading her book. I sensed that something was off. If that guy was her friend or colleague, she would have told me about having lunch with him. It was clear that he wasn't just a friend. From that day onward, I became more alert and started noticing Kate very closely. I noticed her for a few days but found nothing suspicious in her behavior. However, I just couldn't let it go, so I made my next move, checking her phone. That night, when she was asleep, I logged into her phone. Her inbox and social media were clean, except for the general chats with colleagues and students. Then I checked her phone log, but nothing seemed suspicious. I scrolled back to check the call history from the day my friend had seen her with a man. I found a phone call during that time to a contact saved as Roomy16, which meant he was her student from the 2016 batch. Kate saves her students' contacts with their name and batch number for easy recognition. I was perplexed. It could still be believable that she was sitting closely with a friend, but with her student? It sounded so weird and gross. I realized I had scanned the chats of her colleagues and friends, but hadn't looked at her students' messages. Your wife sleeping with her student is the last thing you'd imagine. I opened her WhatsApp again and looked for Rumi's chat, and there it was. She had been sexting him for the last few months. Prior to that, the chat from 2016 was just farewell messages and good wishes. It seemed that 2 months ago, he texted her saying he was back in the city. Apparently, he moved to Texas after graduation. I didn't have the time to read all the messages one by one, so I exported the chat to my email and deleted the history. I wanted to read everything she had been saying to her young lover. I spent the night reading and rereading the conversation. After reading the messages, I learned they had been in a physical relationship while he was still in college. It started when Kate began teaching his class in his final year. Rumi realized Kate had a soft spot for him and started flirting with her. Kate ignored it initially, but eventually indulged and confessed she felt an irresistible desire to be with him. That's how their physical relationship started. However, toward the end of college, Rumi fell in love with a girl, the daughter of a rich businessman in Texas, and decided to move there with her after graduation. Kate was heartbroken, so to cheer her up, Rumi slept with her multiple times during his last few months in college. When I was reading her phone messages earlier, I only read until the farewell wishes and didn't scroll up further. But I'm glad I exported all the chats, which helped me understand the full story. I'm sure Kate wouldn't have revealed all these details. You know the funny part? Kate was dating someone else during that period. This means she's always been a cheater. Kate and Rumi had no contact, and see since he moved out, just occasional wishes on birthdays and Christmas. 3 months ago, Rumi texted her that he had moved back to the city with his wife. His rich girlfriend from Texas was now his wife, and he was managing her father's business in the city. Rumi initiated the conversation by saying he missed her and wanted to taste her again. Initially, Kate resisted his advances, but she eventually gave in and slept with him a few times. By the time I finished reading the chats, it was already dawn. I had work the next day, so I tried to get some sleep. By the time I woke up, she had already left for college. I made my breakfast and went to the office. When I returned home, Kate wasn't there. Usually, she comes back from college by 5 p.m., but it was 7 p.m. and she still hadn't arrived. She usually hung out with friends or colleagues after work and had never bothered me before. But this time, it was different. I wanted her home, so we could have a confrontation and get it over with. I had all the evidence. There was no point in beating around the bush. The revelation was suffocating me, and I wanted it resolved as soon as possible. As time passed, I grew restless. I called her and asked her to come home. She sounded concerned and asked if everything was okay, probably because I had never asked her to come home like this before. Within 30 minutes, she was home. When she walked in, I was sitting on the front porch, waiting. She immediately sensed something was wrong. Seeing me idle, without my phone or iPad, alarmed her. She rushed toward me and asked, "What's wrong?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Sorry for disturbing your meeting with Rumi. That's his name, right?" Her expression froze for a moment. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "There's no need to play hide and seek anymore," I replied. She started denying everything, accusing me of baseless allegations. That's when I pulled out the exported chats on my phone and showed them to her. She stood there, frozen for a moment, then stammered, You breached my privacy?" "Privacy?" I snapped back. "Me sneaking into your phone is a privacy breach, but you sneaking into another man's bed is not a crime?" Wow. Realizing she couldn't deny it anymore, she tried to deflect, saying, "It was just physical. No emotions were involved." I scoffed. "That's supposed to make it better?" I asked. She accused me of overreacting and being impulsive. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said. It didn't mean anything. I told her to pack her things and leave the house. She tried to argue, calling me dramatic, but I stood my ground. "You destroyed this marriage the moment you decided to cheat. There's no going back from this." She eventually stormed into the house, muttering under her breath about how I would regret this and come running back to her in a few days, pleading for reconciliation. I laughed at the delusion. Pleading for her to come back was the last thing I'd ever do. While she packed her things, I sat back on the porch, trying to calm myself. When she left, she didn't even look at me. I reminded her that I would be sending divorce papers soon and hoped she had enough self-respect to sign them without contest. She didn't respond and walked away, contacting Rumi's wife. After she left, I felt a mix of relief and anger. The way she behaved showed no remorse. It was infuriating. That's when I decided I wouldn't let her or her lover get away unscathed. I searched for Rumi on social media, found his wife's profile, and sent her a friend request. Since her account was private, I waited for 2 days, but she didn't accept my request. I couldn't wait any longer, so I sent her screenshots of the most damning parts of their sexting history via private message, explaining who I was and what had happened. An hour later, I received a reply. She wanted to know more details. I told her everything, how I had discovered the affair and confronted Kate. She was understandably shocked and asked for the full chat history. I emailed her everything. After a couple of hours, she messaged me again, thanking me for telling her the truth. She mentioned involving her father, as Rumi worked in her family's business. I didn't hear from her for a few days after that, and I started to worry about her safety. Rumi seemed manipulative, and I feared he might try to harm her after she found out. I tried reaching out to her through other means, but got no response. It was unsettling. A few days later, I got a message from Rumi himself. His tone was arrogant, and his words reeked of delusion. "Your wife is crazy," he said. "She's insisting I marry her. Doesn't she realize I'm 10 years younger than her? Yes, we had sex, but that doesn't mean I marry every woman I sleep with." I laughed bitterly at the absurdity of his message. Rumi seemed clueless about the storm brewing around him. Little did he know his father-in-law was already plotting his downfall. After she left, I felt a mix of relief and anger. The way she behaved showed no remorse. It was infuriating. That's when I decided I wouldn't let her or her lover get away unscathed. I searched for Rumi on social media, found his wife's profile, and sent her a friend request. Since her account was private, I waited for 2 days, but she didn't accept my request. I couldn't wait any longer, so I sent her screenshots of the most damning parts of their sexting history via private message, explaining who I was and what had happened. An hour later, I received a reply. She wanted to know more details. I told her everything, how I had discovered the affair and confronted Kate. She was understandably shocked and asked for the full chat history. I emailed her everything. After a couple of hours, she messaged me again, thanking me for telling her the truth. She mentioned involving her father, as Rumi worked in her family's business. I didn't hear from her for a few days after that, and I started to worry about her safety. Rumi seemed manipulative, and I feared he might try to harm her after she found out. I tried reaching out to her through other means, but got no response. It was unsettling. A few days later, I got a message from Rumi himself. His tone was arrogant, and his words reeked of delusion. "Your wife is crazy," he said. "She's insisting I marry her. Doesn't she realize I'm 10 years younger than her? Yes, we had sex, but that doesn't mean I marry every woman I sleep with." I laughed bitterly at the absurdity of his message. Rumi seemed clueless about the storm brewing around him. Little did he know, his father-in-law was already plotting his downfall. Rumi's message made me laugh bitterly at how delusional he was. He had no idea the real consequences of his actions, and now he was trying to spin the situation as if he was the victim. He genuinely believed that his in-laws were upset because of accounting issues at the family business, not because of the affair. He even claimed Kate was using the opportunity to try to force him into marrying her. At this point, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust toward both of them. Kate and Rumi had been so reckless, and now they were both playing the victim. I had all the evidence, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. It took about a month before the divorce papers were finally ready. During this time, I contacted Kate's mother to let her know what was going on. She was shocked when I told her that Kate was not staying with me anymore. I explained the situation, but she didn't believe me. She asked me to send her proof, so I sent her screenshots of Kate's affair with Rumi. To my surprise, Kate's mother still didn't believe me. She demanded more proof, but I was too exhausted to continue trying to convince her. At that point, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to beg anyone to believe me anymore. I was stunned. I told Kate's mother I was sending the divorce papers to their house, and that Kate would need to sign them. An hour later, my phone started blowing up with abusive voicemails from Kate, calling me everything from a liar to a destroyer of her life. I didn't block her because I wanted to see how far she would go, how low she would stoop in her attempts to make me feel guilty. I'll admit, it stung. I had spent 4 years with Kate, and we were married for 2 of them. I never imagined it would end this way, but at the same time, I couldn't let her abuse me any longer. After all the insults and accusations, I finally blocked Kate. I was done. It had been over a week since she had left, but she still hadn't signed the divorce papers. I checked in with Rumi's wife to see if she had started any divorce proceedings, but she was busy recovering from the trauma. She was in Las Vegas, trying to get away from the stress, while her father was dealing with Rumi's mess. I wasn't concerned about Rumi anymore. He had dug his own grave, and now he had to deal with the consequences. I just wanted to get through the divorce and move on with my life. Kate played a lot of games in the divorce process. She tried to claim my house as part of the alimony, saying I had cheated on her and that she deserved compensation. I couldn't believe the audacity of it all. She had cheated, and now she wanted to take my house. But thank God I had a competent lawyer who fought for me. We managed to keep the house and avoid letting her get any more of my property. I couldn't let her get away with that. As if her behavior wasn't bad enough, she started telling her colleagues that I was the one who had cheated on her. She wanted to paint herself as the victim, and I couldn't let her get away with that. So I did what I should have done months ago. I sent the explicit messages between Kate and Rumi to some of her colleagues. Word spread fast, and soon enough, Kate was the subject of gossip in the teacher's lounge. When Kate found out, She called me from a landline, screaming at me for leaking the messages. This time, I didn't hesitate. I told her that she either signed the divorce papers or I would leak the rest of the chats. Everything I had on her. I was cold, calm, and firm in my voice. She knew I wasn't bluffing. Kate, realizing she had no other choice, agreed to my terms and signed the divorce papers during the next court hearing. Finally, after months of pain and betrayal, I was officially divorced. My friends have been encouraging me to start dating again, but I'm not ready. I want to take some time for myself before jumping into anything. I've been through enough, and I need to heal. I haven't been in touch with Rumi's wife since the last time we spoke. She's handling her own issues with Rumi's betrayal, and I've decided not to involve myself in her life anymore. I don't want any lingering connections to my past. I just want to move forward. I've been inspired by the way Rumi's wife handled the situation. While I don't plan to take a luxurious vacation like she did, I'm planning a solo trip to Montana. A peaceful, quiet place where I can find myself again. Hopefully, I'll come back stronger and more focused on my future. It's been several weeks since the divorce was finalized. I'm starting to feel lighter, like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. It still stings sometimes, but I know I made the right decision. I'm free to live my life without the constant betrayal hanging over me. I'm looking forward to new beginnings, and while the scars from the past will always be there, they no longer define me. It's time for me to rebuild and reclaim my life.